Happy Friday. Welcome to Live Impact News, 9 a.m. on your Friday morning as we get ready for our weekend. I'm Julie Kay. Lots to get to today. National headlines, local headlines. We're going to get to your forecast in a little bit. But we want to start with something that we've been talking about for a few days now. Really important, not just all over the state, but it's putting a lot of national attention on North Carolina here. And that is the newly unveiled redistricting plan from our General Assembly here in North Carolina. Got this news out of Raleigh a couple days ago that Republican lawmakers were considering doing this, and we just got that new proposed map unveiled, I believe, last night. So we're going to get to our expert, Dr. Michael Bitzer, who is everyone's favorite political expert at this point. He's here all the time, professor from Catawba College. Dr. Bitzer, thank you for doing this.
It's great to be with you. Thank you.
Well, so for people who don't follow politics as closely as you and I do, what do people need to know about this redistricting plan?
Well, this North Carolina new congressional map is part of the national redistricting war. We've seen states like Texas redraw their maps to pick up 5 Republican seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. California is responding. They're going to have a referendum that the voters are going to vote on and potentially pick up Democratic seats. And North Carolina is just part of this race in redistricting to try and determine who can control the U.S. House of Representatives next November. And so what we saw in the new map that was released late yesterday was basically a flipping of the first congressional district that tended to be in the northeastern part of the state. It picked up more Republican counties. It swapped with the 3rd congressional district, and that 1st congressional district that was the target was a 50-50 district. It is now a 54%, by my measurements, Republican district, meaning it is probably going to flip from Democratic control under current incumbent Don Davis to Republican control.
Now, when we talk about, I want to get to the impact here in North Carolina, but you mentioned just this is kind of a national redistricting war and that this looks different in every single state. So California, the voters will get to decide on a referendum. Here in North Carolina, that process is very different. I know that the public comment period is open, but voters will not get a say in this necessarily.
Correct. This is purely a General Assembly state legislative action. The governor has no veto power over redistricting legislation. That was part of the package back in the mid-1990s when North Carolina decided to give its governor the veto power. They explicitly excluded redistricting legislation from that veto power. So all the General Assembly has to do is have a majority in the state house and the state senate to pass on this particular map. And Republicans have close to supermajority status. So this will be the map that will come out of the legislature probably sometime next week.
Now, we have seen redistricting happen pretty recently in North Carolina, particularly with congressional districts. I know that we used to have more of an even 7-7 split that changed in 2023. So is that pretty unusual at this point to have so many congressional redistricting back to back to back?
Well, North Carolina is fairly unique in terms of going back to the 1990s. North Carolina has never had a complete set of maps. U.S. House, North Carolina State House, or North Carolina State Senate survive a 10-year period. So we are very accustomed to these redistricting in the middle of a census decade period. But this is basically new for North Carolina because all of those past redraws of maps were court ordered. This one is purely political in terms of trying to beef up Republican seats and take out a Democratic seat because of the politics of what we will likely see in next year's midterm elections.
Now, this would move our split from, like I mentioned a couple years ago, it was more 7-7. We have 14 congressional representatives here in North Carolina. I believe now it's 10 Republicans, 4 Democrats. This would change probably 1 seat to be 11-3. Now, of course, that impacts the northeastern counties. We're closer to the western side of the state, more middle side of the state, but that still impacts us because this potentially could impact everybody if the congressional split at the national level changes, correct?
Most definitely. And, by all accounts, this seems like the district will flip from Democratic control to Republican control. If you take all of the elections statewide across North Carolina in 2020, 2022, and 2024, the major elections, president, U.S. Senate, North Carolina governor, add them all up across the state, North Carolina is literally a 50-50 state. But after this map gets passed, and most likely after next year's midterm elections, it will be 11 Republicans and 3 Democrats. This is the power of partisan gerrymandering when it comes to redistricting.
I'm glad you mentioned that North Carolina is such an interesting state in that regard. We have it on our website, too, the breakdown of each of these districts that will be impacted and who they voted for in the past election, both at the governor level and the presidential level. And it's kind of split all over the place. This is a split ticket state oftentimes. Yeah. And I know that this is going to really impact how North Carolina is represented. I am curious what the Democrats are going to do. I know you said that there isn't much because the Republicans have close to a supermajority, but we've talked about Representative Don Davis, who is the target here. I have a quote from him. He told RAL, families across eastern North Carolina are struggling and feel that Washington, D.C. is broken. I understand these concerns all too well, and goes on to say that politicians should be focusing on fixing bigger problems. That's kind of the Democratic response I've seen. Is there anything they can do in terms of stalling this vote? Anything that you expect from the Democratic side?
I don't think in the General Assembly next week there will be any real power that the Democrats have to stop this particular legislation. It would not surprise me in the least if once this legislation is passed, you have a lawsuit. And particularly, it will probably be a racial discrimination lawsuit. The key question regarding that is there's currently a case that was heard by the U.S. Supreme Court this week that could potentially gut the Voting Rights Act of 1965, take that out of the equation, and really give legislatures across the country the ability to draw districts without having to draw what's called a majority-minority district to help minority voters elect one of their own. I think once that decision is handed down, probably early next year, you may see another spat, another round of redistricting going on. I don't know if North Carolina would necessarily do that because we have a March primary. Candidate filing is in December. So it's kind of a tight window here to get this done. But most likely we will see a lawsuit filed over it. Where that goes is really dependent on what the U.S. Supreme Court will decide in that Louisiana case.
Do you anticipate that that Supreme Court case may impact southern states a bit more?
I think it will have a direct impact across the southern region. One analysis by the New York Times yesterday basically looked at it, and if they went with the most aggressive redraws across the South, you could see potentially 12 Democratic seats flip to Republican seats with any kind of redrawing in a number of southern states. So I think that this is going to be the potential that we will see next year, maybe the year after the 26 midterm elections, but then we'll be coming up on 2030 with a new census and then another round of redistricting after that. So I would just say to folks outside of North Carolina, if they're watching, welcome to what North Carolina has experienced over the past 40 years.
And speaking of North Carolina, General Assembly has some other big things going on that are kind of at a stalemate right now. They're going back and doing this with no budget. We are well past the budget deadline. Have you any thoughts on any headway that you expect them to make, or do you think we'll be at this stalemate for a while?
It feels almost like we're at the national level as well. The national government has been shut down with no continuing funding options. North Carolina continues to operate, but it's on the past years worth of budget, so government does stay open. But it feels like the two are just kind of locked in terms of where they are at the national level. It's very much Republicans versus Democrats. Here in North Carolina, it's fairly unique in that it's North Carolina House Republicans versus North Carolina Senate Republicans. And that's where the stalemate and the dynamics are really at play here in this state.
Lots going on, both at the national level and the state level. Dr. Bitzer, anything else you think people need to know about what's going on right now?
I think certainly just stay tuned. I mean, there will be continuations of change going on in American politics and certainly in North Carolina politics. So I just encourage everybody, stay on top of the news as best you can.
And Dr. Bitzer, get some rest. I'm sure you're going to be busy for the next couple of weeks. Lots going on, but we always appreciate your insight. Thank you for doing this.